All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining Williams Cancer Institute on our second official stream here. It's been an exciting world, especially in the development of pancreatic cancer. A lot of us have seen the tremendous work of Dr. Mariano and his recent accolades, and we felt that it was a good opportunity for us to dive straight into this and talk about some of the similarities of the work of Williams Cancer Institute, alongside some of the parallels and even areas of what the future looks like when it comes to pancreatic cancer in progress. Furthermore, we want to dive in a bit deeper as to what is available and what is at disposal now, what's working on humans that is otherwise being demonstrated as successful in mice, and how we might otherwise look at the frontier of saving lives of those who have cancer, not only pancreatic, but at any scale. So today with us, we have Dr. Jason Williams and Dr. Nathan Goodyear as well. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you, Jared.
Thanks, Jared.
Of course, of course. So let's start just from the beginning. I'd like to dive in at just what happened with this news story, right? This has been one of the more viral news stories related to medical developments that we've seen in years. Dr. Mariano has been circulating widely, largely because his team is under the belief that, or people under the belief that his team has begun to cure pancreatic cancer, which in itself needs some verbiage change. But we want to also start clarifying, like, what exactly is happening? What does this mean for us right now? And what does it mean for us over the horizon of 1, 3, 5 years? Jason, do you want to kind of dive into that from your perspective to begin with?
Sure, yeah. So, I think that's the interesting thing is that, they looked at like a three-drug combination targeting sort of different aspects of the cancer. One, is epidermal growth factor receptor, another STAT3, another's KRAS. And so they're targeting these three things, and they saw, obviously great improvement. Now, the
Are
way I
these
would
new drugs that are being used? Have these ever been used in any other capacity, or what was the
so
decision to use these?
yeah, so one is available already. The other two still investigational drugs. But these are drugs that people have been working with. We work with them as well. So this is something that's around. But it's interesting that they showed that combination, and obviously they're looking at this systemically, different than we like to do things in the tumor a lot. But they're doing it systemically. But this would be a very, like, could I make an analogy of this? Like, remember, like HIV. HIV originally, when they start treating HIV and AIDS, they use like one drug, and extend the life expectancy a year, and then they switch the second drug and extend life expectancy a year, and then their third drug. But then when they put the three together, oh well, they got something that actually now keeps people alive. Basically, they're almost cured. I mean, they're able to respond. This is kind of the same type of concept. So the nice thing is it gives us an option of how you could treat pancreatic cancer systemically, and keep it down, and not necessarily having to use chemotherapy. And so, for example, in certain cases, we really need the immune system to attack the cancer. We know in humans, this is our situation is obviously different than the mice. These mice are much more controlled. Keep in mind, their cancers are all kind of the same, right? Whereas humans, we're treating humans with lots of different types of pancreatic cancer, different KRAS mutations. So this is like one controlled type of thing. Um, so, so the idea is that if you could knock this cancer back a little bit to make it easier, for then you could use immunotherapies behind it to kind of get the final knockout blow. So it's
Would
really
these
good.
drugs be considered as iatrogenic of a relationship to how it treats the cancer as, say, chemotherapy traditionally?
Yeah. So I think so. This is the idea where instead of like using say like a situation where we might have advanced pancreatic cancer patient comes in, they got a lot of cancer. So we need to knock it down first before we start using the immunotherapies. So the patient's going to get, a chemotherapy regimen that's going to have oxaliplatin, 5-FU. They're going to get these hard agents that are going to damage the body, but it's going to shrink the cancer and then make it more susceptible. Now, also, we're negatively impacting the immune system while we're doing that. Whereas these drugs can help shrink the cancer, but they're positively impacting the immune system because they're changing the immune aspects of that. So that's a real advantage of this, and I think it's going to be hugely helpful to change how you attack the patient or how you approach the patient, like systemically, because like that's a real important thing, and I think that the information that they provided was really key to help guide that. And hopefully now that will get people going to where, okay, maybe we can get away from these chemotherapies and we could use this. Now, we know in humans, because we work with these drugs, we work with the drugs that they work with, we've injected them, we know that stuff works. But we know that in humans, a lot of times you need to push the immune system a little bit more. So you need a couple more agents on top of that. I mean, three agents definitely very helpful. But what our personal experience, we find we need eight agents.
Wow. So that's more than 150% in that respect. It sounds like from what you're sharing that, when stakes are high, there's no drastic measure that isn't worth taking. It sounds like what's been a total war or a nuclear war approach to cancer previously when it came to chemotherapy that had many innocent bystanders in terms of your organs and just the way that your body develops. This is being a little bit more, I don't want to say conservative because the stakes are still high, but it's being a little bit more precise or a little bit more
That's
targeted,
right.
have a little bit less collateral damage.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. So that's it. I think that's a huge benefit. And obviously from our standpoint, we already use these type of drugs. We're already adopting this type of thing. We obviously in human patients we have to use more, and we have human patients that we know these patients will go on hopefully to be cured from advanced pancreatic cancer. We need to give them more time. We need to evaluate them because we need 5 years. But from our standpoint, we know that even though they cured the rats, and we also know that we can cure humans. We just need to allow that time to see it. And it's a similar process, but maybe a little more advanced because you need other immunotherapies on top of it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And
Jared, this should
go
really
ahead,
be
Doc.
celebrated because I mean he is thinking outside of the box. I mean he innovated bringing in the RAS in the early
Yeah.
1980s, and
Yeah.
but now what he's doing is saying, okay, one drug. Medicine and science has this issue where they're looking for the magic bullet repeatedly, one cause, one treatment, one drug for one disease. That will never work. Cancer is working in a quantum physics, in a pleiotropic. It's doing 1,000 things, 1,000,000 things at one time, and we expect one drug to come in and do it. So his work should be celebrated because he's saying, I understand that just simply giving a KRAS inhibitor is not going to work. I need to add this on top of this on top of this to basically match what cancer is doing. But I think also what's important here to recognize is KRAS is seen as an oncogene. It works in the immune system. It suppresses how antigens are presented to the immune system. It recruits immunosuppressive cells. It leads to immune evasion. It remodels the tumor microenvironment, making it unable for the immune system to get in. So he is really bringing forth really a shift from oncogenic thinking to actually immune therapy thinking, which, as I said beforehand, it's like there's a baton handoff in the Olympics, right? Of course, it's winter, not summer, but I guess if they were doing a baton handoff with ice skating or something, it would be handed off to Jason and then say, we're going to win this gold medal together, because now it becomes about the immune system. Though it's still an oncogene, it's working in the immune system. And so he's bringing the immune system to bear, which, if you want to know why cancer fears the immune system, look at what it does. It either creates dysfunction or excludes or blocks the immune system in 100% of tumors, just depending on what it's trying to do.
Absolutely. Well, that's really fascinating how you've kind of alluded to that. I feel that with these advancements and these developments of what Dr. Mariano is doing, how much time do you think that it's taken to get from, okay, here's just doing chemotherapy to, okay, slight augmentations that get it to the stage of success? I would imagine that there's layers upon layers of iterations and different trees that this can branch out on. How much of a long time coming do you think that this has been?
Oh gosh. Well, hard to say. I mean, because there's been pieces of this. I mean, obviously, if you look at his original work, I mean, he worked in RAS and discovered that back in 1982. And so he started laying the groundwork back then for
Yeah.
things, and took all these years to really start seeing stuff to come to fruition. And so it's really amazing. But I do think that this gives us a chance to where these patients who particularly are more advanced, and immunotherapy has trouble dealing with advanced patients because the immune system, it just can't grasp all that cancer. You need ways to take it down more. You need other agents with it. And so normally, where's our current situation with approved agents, it's mostly chemotherapies. I mean, we do have some targeted drugs that we can use, but we're having to use chemotherapies which are harming the patient while we are harming the cancer. So we're taking that, we know that's what we have to do. Whereas this situation may be less harm to the patient. Now these have side effects. I mean, these together, you're going to see some side effects with it, but they're going to be better tolerated than the chemotherapies, and they're going to be better for the immune system than the chemotherapies would be. And so, it's a really good guide. I mean, it's nice, any extra data, anything that anybody can have. And I think this is really important, and also just showing to the world, okay, this is the direction we need to go. And yeah, because it'd be great that in the future, the patients, okay, you're advanced, you start out, you take these 3 agents, and then you shift over into the immunotherapies.
It'd be great to stack it with intratumoral, right, in the mouse
Yeah.
model, because that's what we're doing
That's
in
right.
humans. So because there's the innovation of what he's doing there that we're basically kind of parallel, but it's systemic. Bring that intratumorally. Now it's stacking innovation upon innovation, and now that's where things go exponential, right? That's what we need.
Well, speaking of the exponential growth on things, right? Like we were speaking previously about how Larry, when you treated him, he was on chemotherapy. So the treatments that you provided were something of an augmentation, right?
That's correct.
So there is kind of a unique element of there's small degrees of change to ultimately ensure that you're giving the best shot for the patient, but at the same time making advancements in potential routes of greater cures. And I'm going to toss either of you a Hail Mary on this one. AI has been a massive development in human productivity and basically compressionalizing the amount of time that it takes from output to evaluation and to reiteration, right? Dr. Mariano has been working on this for 45 years roughly. Consider a world where in the 80s, if AI were available, how much quicker do you feel that this would have been advanced, and how much faster do you think we would have developed this cure?
Yeah. Well, I think it's unfortunate there were a lot of discoveries in the late 70s and early 80s that if they put them all together, we could have made real advancement, but they just didn't see it because they're so compartmentalized. One person's looking at one thing, and what you need to start looking at is how these things work together. Because some of these things, when you look at in isolation, it does one thing, but when you look at what it's doing when other things are going on, is different. For example, one of the drugs that they're using is STAT3 inhibitor. Well, we've worked with STAT3 inhibitors for a while. There are drugs that are available that inhibit STAT3. I mean, celecoxib, which is a COX-2 inhibitor, is an example of a STAT3 inhibitor. So I mean, there's drugs that you could use, and that's one that we propose, like in the biopsy. At the minimum, you could inject that into the biopsy site. You could reduce the cancer risk, but nonetheless. But what does STAT3 do? Well, it does one thing in isolation, but then what does it do when IL-6 is elevated? What does it do when TGF-beta is elevated? It starts doing something different. And so that's the thing where they kind of miss it, where they identify these things and thought, oh, this is what it does, but they didn't realize what does it actually do in the body. I mean, the thing is that when you start looking like what are things doing like in a cell, that's one thing, but you need to see how it works in the body, and it's different when you have all these different things going on. And so yeah, I
The
think
body's basically a giant algorithm, right? Like we have simulations with AI and things like that. Is AI helping simulate these potential outcomes, or at least saving time on the innovation time cycle?
I'm sure it could, but I think we had already sort of figured it out before. I mean, we sort of know what different drugs we need to use in combination. We just need to be able to get approval for doing these drugs. I mean, that's the thing, is that there's numerous drugs that are there that will work. We just don't have approval to use them. So if we're going to use them, we're using them outside. And then the other thing is that is how you get insurance coverage and things like that. So you need the drug companies or whoever's going to develop it to unite these drugs, put it together, and present it as a drug to the FDA. Now, the drug companies had not been doing this before. Our company, Synchromune, I think, is really one of the first leaders to do a 4-drug combination. And that was unheard of. And everybody's looking really at like 1 or 2 drugs maximum, but we need to be expanding out. And 4 is not even enough. I mean, we need more. I mean, like I said, I think to cure a lot of pancreatic cancer patients, minimum is going to be 8 drugs. And there's certain cases that are more complicated that you're going to need 16. You might need 20. I mean, it depends, because patients are not all the same. The genetics are not all the same in the cancer. So they can be a little different. You obviously start with what works with most people. and you see if that works. If it doesn't work, then you got to start pivoting.
You have to
And,
wait for response and
yeah,
determine how
right.
you adjust based on the variables of
Yeah.
that individual unique human.
Yeah,
And so,
the AI. Go ahead, Jason.
what's the problem with the FDA is that so you have the drug approval of these certain drugs, but what you need is approval of a lot of drugs, you know, 30 drugs that are, say, these are all approved, but you can mix and match and use them as needed. Now, versus like, well, this, you can only use this by itself, this by itself. No, no, we need all these drugs. That's why I say it's like in the future, you'll have a robotic system and the medicines will be loaded up like an inkjet printer. And they'll do the analysis of the cancer. It'll know what it needs to do, and it'll infuse the different drugs based on that. Right? That's the future.
Yeah, AI is accelerating, and I think faster than anything that we can imagine. We're using AI on a regular basis, and it accelerates association, and it accelerates the correlation and the relationships, which is really what Jason was talking about how everything is working together. Back in the early 19th century, there was this, proposal of holism because they were rejecting that reductionism, that compartmentalization where the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, but it's about bringing it all together. And I think AI really helps us to take those individual parts and say, now bring it all together. And but here's the challenge, Jared. And Jason and I've talked a lot about this. Okay, so if the research in the clinical arm is using AI, accelerating innovation, bringing the future of cancer care to today, is regulation going to meet that innovation? And the problem is all of that information is going to be at the fingertips of the patient, the family, the friend, the loved one that's affected by this scourge. There's cancer that's just terrible. Pancreatic cancer is horrible. They're all bad, but it's a horrible disease. If they have access to that information, yet regulation doesn't keep up and innovate, as Jason's describing, bringing these multiple touch points simultaneously, pleiotropic effects through multiple therapeutics at the same time, there's going to be a problem. And so we got to work on the regulatory side, and that's where Jason's innovating there as well. I mean, it's the dude doesn't sleep, so he texts me at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I text him at 5 in the morning. So, we're on different time schedules there. But anyways, you got to bring both, because that's going to be able to what helps us get this to the patients that need it, not tomorrow, today.
Well, looking at just some general numbers here, and if we're thinking about what motivates the change now, right? There's few things in life that's more motivating than life itself, or death, should we call it? 25,000 plus people a day die from cancer in the world. In the United States, we're in the thousands. Pancreatic cancer, we're in the hundreds of people dying daily. Globally is also in the thousands. If that's not motivating enough for the current antiquated regulatory landscape to change, money is arguably the only other thing. And if we talk about Dr. Mariano, he's stating that 30 million euros essentially is what's going to be needed in terms of advancing this to clinical trials. What's absurd is that money just isn't lining up on his door, right? By the minute, people are dying. And so in that respect, what you guys are doing with the advancement of this technology and application, saving lives today, is clearly like trend setting in that respect. But to get this to be done at a macro scale, like, what do you feel is ultimately going to be necessary for that? And $30 million may seem like a lot of money, but realistically, how is that going to get us from where we're at to authorized and approved human trials?
Yeah, I can tell you, because we did this exactly with our stuff at Synchro meeting, and it was about that same amount of money. So that gets you really through the phase one. So you'll need to do a phase one with a 3-drug combination, and then once you do that, then you're going to need to escalate that to a phase two. Well, that you're going to need about 250 million, at least, maybe a little bit more.
Where does this
350.
money go? How much of it goes to the actual application and trial itself?
So you have to pay. You have all these fees you have to pay. You have stuff you got to pay to the FDA. You got fees you got to pay to the research organizations. All this other stuff to monitor
And
you.
the FDA is just people that are basically hitting approve, deny in so many
Yeah,
words,
right.
right?
And
So like
they're
millions of dollars going to that as a cause seems a bit ludicrous.
they're going to have all their fees. Everybody's going to have their fees. You got to pay all that stuff. Then you got to pay the hospitals, the doctors, the other stuff, all the stuff. You got to pay for the drugs on top of it. So while you're doing all that, and then so to take a drug,
Nathan, if you want to continue there for a
Yeah,
second.
yeah. So I would add this, it's really interesting when you look at the data, 5% of all medications in oncology actually end up achieving approval by FDA. 5%. So you said millions, it's hundreds of millions of dollars if you're going through the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 process. That's, patients get so frustrated and they go, why is this taking so long? And then you mention money and they go, why does it cost so much money? And we've got a phase 2 study in the US. We've got phase 1 we got multiple phase 1s ongoing in Mexico. But as little sleep as he gets, as little sleep as I get, there's just a few of us. So that's where, when you can find partnerships that are aligned, relationships that are aligned, I think you can accelerate that process. And that's where I think, what he's doing and trying to do, the infrastructure, the wheels already been created there at the Williams Cancer Institute. And Jason and I have actually been messaging back and forth over the last week or so about, okay, it's time to start the pancreatic cancer study. The reason we get more pancreatic cancer patients than we know what to do with, because they are coming to us also at a point where they've gone through 18 months of chemo, the Whipple procedure, radiation, and they're like, I need a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
If we can get those patients earlier, Jared, and the immune system's not harmed, and then go, okay, let's take that immune excluded cold tumor. Now let's get the immune system involved, not destroy it, but educate the immune system. Now you completely avoid things like chemotherapy. And you mentioned money. Well, now you're talking about, are we doing away with a whole quote unquote, treatment strategy that has dominated the paradigm the last 100 years? Yeah, but that's innovation. That's innovation. And you know what? Patients demand it, and we should demand it as well.
Absolutely. And we're talking about another factor, which is compounding risk, right? We have the risk of the treatment that we're applying to the patient. We also have the risk of a stage process of trialing, right? So, you have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 that you have to go through, which we're talking 9 figures, hundreds of millions of dollars to get through this process. And then you're sharing that risk with the investors that are coming behind it. I'd like to better understand the degree of risk that they're assuming, because what percentage of trials fail at either stage 1, 2, and 3? And I would imagine that that's a sunk cost for those people that are contributing, correct?
Oh yeah, the major investment there is obviously the loss of course, the overall money is millions and millions and millions of dollars and time. And so, as you've correctly framed it, patients with cancer, time is not their ally. And so the money investment is a loss for them. The time investment is a loss. It's a loss investment for the patient. And so what we have to do is we have to be able to figure out, okay, most of cancer medications, that is, and this is a medication, but it's also an innovative delivery technique, 95% of those will never reach FDA approval. Most of them will pass the phase 1, which is safety, but it's the phase 2 and phase 3 that gets bogged down. And I think Jason's back on. Jason, do you know the statistics about phase 2, phase 3, where they bogged down?
I'm sorry, what was the question there? I didn't catch it.
So the question was we were talking about the matter of compounding risk. I mean, you have the compounding risk of a cancer patient and the treatments you're applying. And then when you apply another layer of risk of going through clinical trials, you're then associating risk profiles with the investors that are providing you this capital to go through them. So we were discussing about failure rates of clinical trials. And then ultimately, is that just a sunk cost? Like, is this is this basically med tech casino that people are playing? Right.
Well, some of these drugs, of course, so you don't have the idea of how this can actually work in humans. Okay, maybe it works really well in the animals, and then you take it over into humans, and it doesn't do the same thing. So so you have that risk. There's great examples. I mean, there was a drug called sting agonist. They found these sting agonists were really amazing in mice. Drug companies loved it, bought it for like $1 billion. They took it to clinical trials. It didn't work in humans because the sting receptor is different in humans. It's not the same one. So that drug didn't work. And so they have that risk. Thing that we know with like what Barbasol did, these drugs are used already in humans in various forms. So we know that they already individually work. So the idea that putting them together is much more plausible than, say, a drug that you never tried in humans, right?
So I'm just looking at some statistics that was been forwarded over by our team here. It looks like the success rate transition from phase one to phase two on average, or the failure rate is roughly 53%. From phase two to phase three is roughly a failure rate of 72%. And then from phase three to filing, it's a failure rate of roughly 45%. So we're talking about, like, if you can compound those, like when you have like basically those rates, the odds of getting from start to finish, like you're talking like a 15% chance essentially to 20 something percent chance. These are just arbitrary figures. That capital that otherwise is invested in this process, does the FDA just keep it? Like the doctors obviously just keep it. Like, do you get any sort of do you get some sort of continued filing priority, or does the capital that you've invested then just disappear? Like,
I don't
that's
think there's a refund there, Jared. I don't think
no
there's a
refund. Good.
refund. I don't, Jason, is there a refund like on tax day?
I guess
I
what
don't
I'm
think
trying to
so.
say is it's clearly a broken system, because I
Oh
mean, you're
yeah.
investing in something that has a low chance of success, but a high chance of return should it succeed. And that isn't exactly a game that should be played with saving lives, in my
No.
opinion.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, when it comes to life, what is the cost of a life? You can't put a cost on it. Both in monetary, but relationships and time. You just cannot put a cost on that. And one of the things I think that's important, that in this medication process of development, and Jason's been in there a lot longer than I have. There seems to be a loss of the humanity of the patient and the potential of what it means to be a physician to serve the patient. Was talking to a good friend of mine who actually has working in a big pharma, and she's been working in the aspect where they keep the patient's verbiage and patient's communication to the doctors running the study. And the big pharma company doesn't like that because that slows them down. That costs them more money. Yet it provides a therapeutic that more matches what they say they're experiencing and what they need. So, in my perspective, I think we need to bring the humanity back to it on both sides, the doctor side and the pharmaceutical side. And I think come together. I think if we just sat down at a big table, RFK, and we just said, okay, we're innovating in the clinical side. How do we innovate in the regulatory side to match? And then when that happens, the innovation, I think bringing things to market will really help. There's always going to be the margin there for the manufacturing company, always. Now, how do we get that to the patient faster, yet maintain the safety profile? And going with the immune system is the way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason, welcome back. I'd like to ask you kind of a follow on to that. From your doctor crystal ball, so to speak, what do you see on the horizon for Dr. Mariano in terms of like what struggles may he be encountering, or based on your understanding of his treatments, like what do you feel is the likelihood of success going through this trialing if he gets that money? Oh, we lost some audio for you there, Jason.
You must have got a phone call.
Okay, I'll toss that over to you, Dr. Goodyear.
Could you repeat the question, Jared?
Well, here's Jason again. Jason.
Okay.
We're still encountering some audio issues for you there. There should be an audio input next to the microphone. You should be able to select that and assign it. So while Jason is getting that resolved, Dr. Goodyear, I'll ask the question once more. Based on your understanding of what's ahead of Dr. Mariano, what do you feel that he could encounter in terms of resistance in his process of trialing, and what do you feel the likelihood of success is based on what he's doing?
Yeah, well, I think the likelihood of success, obviously, we're a little bit biased because we're already doing it, is very high for him. Now, it was really interesting watching the reactions, Jared, because I like to see, okay, there were a lot of people that were celebrating it and getting really excited about it, as they should. But there was equally some people that were very negative on it. And they were like, well, this is just mouse model. This is just animals. I want to see it in humans. And rightly so. And I sense a little bit of some scarring there because they've seen it before, right? Your NBC nightly news, hey, innovation is going to cure cancer. And everybody gets excited and then it goes nowhere. And so he's on the right road for sure, because we're doing it in humans. I think where he's going to need to do work is actually work and find relationships and correlations with those that are maybe doing bits and pieces of it in humans, and that'll accelerate that basically step from animals to humans. Because when you go from animals to humans, in most cases with drug studies, it's, I don't know what's going to happen. We do. We do. So there's alignment of purpose, there's alignment of thought, there's alignment of focus. Don't reinvent the wheel when it's already there.
Yeah, maybe. Can you guys,
Absolutely.
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Let's get the audio turned up a little bit for you there. That's on our side, though. Would love to hear your thoughts as well, Jason.
Yeah, well, I think the big thing is that, so, taking drugs that have some track record in humans and did this in mice. So then now you got to unite those 3 drugs together and do clinical trials with the 3 and see how that affects things, because it becomes different dynamics with those drugs. The thing is that because each one had been used individually in humans before, then you think, okay, this has a really good chance of working in humans, and hopefully would be very tolerable, right? So the same concepts. Like if you look at Pepsid and bicarbonate, they have that mixture together. The Pepsid works by reducing acid. Tums was bicarbonate, so that works. You put the 2 together, they should work, right? And that's what they do. It's new idea, and so it's the same concept. So it gives you an idea that it should really work well. So I think there's less risk on that. So I think the fact that if they want to get investors to put money behind this, they're going to feel a lot more secure that this is going to be something that you can actually take to approval.
Absolutely. And I'd like to kind of pivot. This is kind of the last topic we have on this, and that's like with where Dr. Mariano is and so forth, with regards to where his developments are and what he's achieved thus far. Where do you see Williams Cancer Institute plugging into this? Where can Williams Cancer Institute provide value, and where would ideally be some collaborative opportunities to work with Dr. Mariano and his team?
Yeah, well, I think the one thing is obviously they'll need to try to get approval of that individually. So they'll first need to do that by itself. But what you'll probably find in humans is that it will work. It's not going to be the same as in rats, right? So it's not going to be 100% cure. It's going to be a much lower level, but it's going to help. And then later you could unite what they're doing with what we do. Now, of course, I'll be honest with you, we already do what they do, but together, but in the tumor a lot. So it's a little bit different, but same type of concept. And then you can unite it, but obviously trying to get approval. We're on our end trying to get approval of these immunotherapy agents. They're on their side would be approval to get these sort of targeted agents, and then you unite the 2 together. Well, then you're going to have something that's going to cure or should cure a high percentage of patients.
Absolutely. And it's the things that humans do well is collaborate, right? Like we can shorten the half-life of time to learn something if you can collaborate with an individual that's otherwise already been leading the charge in certain areas, right? So achieving more together, especially when it comes to human lives, there's no price on it.
Right. Yeah.
The more we build bridges, the more we will accelerate the innovation and save more lives. And that's what it's all about, serving mankind. But we serve mankind not individually, we do it together.
There's a unique development, and this is not veering off too far off course, but I'm curious you guys' opinion, and it ties into more recent events. There's been a recent development in the sector of personal AI. I don't know if you guys have seen what was called ClaudeBot, which then turned into OpenClaw and so forth. I'm sure they had some fun IP issues with that. But essentially, it's creating what's a localized, I guess you could call it a localized source of a context window of your personal AI, knowing how you operate, the things you need, the way that you operate, the knowledge that you have, the information that you have, the data that you have. And then it uses that as almost like a filtering process between that and other LLMs. There's a process, as we as humans have kind of developed from going from writing letters to each other, to doing the telegraph, to having a telephone, to doing emails, to doing text messages. There's almost been a bit of a fractionalizing of the way that we connect as humans, and a little bit of a lessening of that human connection that we make with each other. but there's been an improvement in efficiency at scale. And the next phase of this, I believe, to be agentic communications, in which knowledge can be shared and otherwise transferred agentically between medical researchers, things of that, where perhaps you might not even know somebody who has something that solves a hole or something of that you're needing. Do you feel that agentic assistance with regards to that collaborative nature will be something that is deployable within the medical scene as it develops with personal AI?
Well, I think there's a lot, obviously a lot that's go on with AI, but I do feel that we already really know all the answers. I mean, like the AI can help show it again, but we already really know it. I mean, we just need to put it together.
Yeah. Dr. Goodyear, any thoughts?
No, I think there's always going to be innovation in the communication. That's where relationships break down, is communication. And we're already using that right now to accelerate, understanding and associations, but bringing in connections with other like-minded, other spheres of influence and align those up. I think absolutely that's going to happen. And just a thought was coming in my mind. There was actually a chat room that somebody created for these bots. So the bots went in the chat room, and the bots, they were talking to each other irregardless of any people. And so I was like, I wonder if you could create a chat room for bots to talk overnight while we're sleeping about a problem we left at the end of the day, to come back in the morning and have the problem solved.
There's a unique angle of that.
Yeah.
And, blockchain technology is actually solving a bit of an interface of it through what's referred to as zero knowledge proofs, which enable essentially agents to represent data to one another without releasing the data to one another, to determine if there's matching data opportunities or things of that nature, which is really kind of a unique and fascinating element, because IP, our creativity that we derive mentally is going to be the commodity in this agentic world that we're running into. So protecting that through mathematical computation and so forth is going to be critical. But it's very much that. I mean, it's almost, if you think of it from a physical analogy, almost how Elon Musk has the vision of, if you have a Tesla, it can do rideshare for you at night and pay your Tesla fee. Right. So if you have a personal AI that you've otherwise developed to have your skills and your knowledge, it equally should be able to monetize that in capacities, or at least collaborate with that and advance in your sleep. Right. So it's definitely a fascinating thing. And when we think of it from that, we're not only talking about the compression line of growth and knowledge, we're also talking about a 12-hour workday turning into 24, or a 12 plus 24, because there's your workday as to when you're being proficient and efficient, and then there's AI that never sleeps, which is ultimately scalable. So really fascinating developments that I'm sure that will integrate into the medical scene. But to tie back to the last thing with regards to Dr. Mariano and so forth, say, for example, you have listeners. We've shared this many times. I'd like to share it again. Dr. Williams, can you share a little bit about how somebody can learn more about Williams Cancer Institute and what the patient should do in the event that they're seeking cancer treatment, pancreatic or otherwise?
Yeah. So the big thing, obviously you can look at our website, williamscancer.com. And, we've got a lot of information out there. You've got a lot of videos, podcasts, YouTube. Of course, have, my original book, The Immunotherapy Revolution, has some great information. Dr. Goodyear and I have a new book coming out pretty soon that's going to be really revolutionary. It's going to have a lot of information for cancer patients.
Wonderful. And the website is williamscancerinstitute.com for anybody that's interested in learning more, reaching out or contacting. You can also reach out to Dr. Williams via DM, or Dr. Goodyear via DM on X. And we want to thank everybody for participating in today's call. We hope to have another one with you very soon. Thank you, Dr. Williams, and thank you, Dr. Goodyear.
And thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry.
Take care, everyone.